The 2019 and 2020 offseason is supposed to be about free agents, but so far we've talked about cheating, snitches, and I don't know, the Hall of Fame. Is Larry Walker going to get in? Is Barry Bonds going to get in? Who knows? But today we're going to focus on the main point of the offseason, and we're going to try and predict every single move that one team can make that can push them over the top by acquiring one single player. Before we start, I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, SeatGeek. If you guys are going to any concerts or sporting events anytime soon, use code Fuzzy to save $20 off your tickets because they can get a little expensive. And now, without further ado, we're not going to waste any more time. Here's the one player that every team needs before 2020 begins. Now, the Baltimore Orioles, they will lead the charge as some of the teams on this list that require more than just one piece. But for the sake of this video, again, we are going to keep it to one single player. I think that Ivan Nova would be a perfect fit in Baltimore because he led the American League last year with 34 starts. He did have a 4.72 ERA. The Orioles, we all know that they're in full rebuild mode, so if you give some time for Adley Rutschman to actually progress in the minors, their number one pick from 2019, I think if you get Ivan Nova, he is a veteran presence and maybe he can rub that off on some of the other guys. And again, they need more than just one piece, so this one's kind of a wash. So the player that I was going to pick for the Red Sox actually just signed with the Atlanta Braves. I thought Will Smith to the Red Sox was going to be a done deal, but the Braves, they're trying to go for a chip, and that is an excellent move on their part. So if anything, the Boston Red Sox, they can still get Daniel Hudson, who looked fantastic, not only in their regular season, but in the postseason as well. He had a 2.47 ERA combined last year, and then we all know what happened in the World Series. He was lights out. I think the Red Sox, their main concern right now is not their offense, obviously, because they were top 5 in every single category. It's getting Chris Sale back healthy. Hopefully Nathan Eovaldi can have a decent 2020 and maintaining that closing role with Daniel Hudson. The New York Yankees just declined a $15 million option for Edwin Encarnacion, so they now have an extra $15 million to spend on whoever they want. The Yankees, just like the Red Sox, they do not need offense. Their starting pitching, if they can correct it, they will be the front runners to win a World Series next season. I think that if they can get World Series MVP Steven Strasburg, he's going to be cheaper than Garrett Cole, but in big time moments, we all saw that he can perform. Maybe you have an innings limit, but when you combine him with Masahiro Tanaka in the playoffs, you have Luis Severino, who's going to be healthy, and then Steven Strasburg. That's an excellent 1-2-3 punch. The bullpen is incredible. The Yankees, that'd be scary. But if they do not get Steven Strasburg, what I think they can do is save that $15 million for someone else and maybe trade away Miguel Andujar to the New York Mets in exchange for Noah Syndergaard, because the Mets, they really don't have a third baseman. Todd Frazier is not going to cut it. So if you're a Mets fan, would you do that? And if you're a Yankees fan, would you do that? Noah Syndergaard for Miguel Andujar? I'm just throwing it out there. The Tampa Bay Rays shocked the world last year by actually making it out of the first round of the playoffs. Well, technically it was the wild card, so I don't know if you would consider that a round in the playoffs, but they performed really well. Now, the one thing that they will need, especially if Travis d'Arnaud does leave, because he was pretty solid. He had 16 home runs with 60-something RBIs, but if we're being honest with ourselves, he was really only good for 1 month of the season. I think he won Player of the Month. So the Tampa Bay Rays, they are going to need a catcher. I think that Jason Castro, he fits the mold in Tampa perfectly because they do not sign expensive pieces. Castro had 13 home runs in just 79 games last year, and he's a pretty solid defender. So the Rays, I think that they can cut bait with Travis d'Arnaud, save some money, while still acquiring Jason Castro, who will have a full-time load. He'll be pretty solid. Coming up next, we have the Toronto Blue Jays, who are in the final stages of their rebuild. They have Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Bo Bichette, Kevin Biggio. They have some pieces that are going to be amazing in just a few years, but for right now, they're kind of in the same category as the Orioles, the Marlins, and a few other teams on this list. They need more than just one pitcher. I think Wade Miley would be great in Toronto. He had a 3.28 ERA in the first half of 2019, and then I can tell you guys right now, in the second half, he was on my fantasy team. I had to drop him because he went from a 3.28 to a 5.07, but the Blue Jays, they're not trying to make the playoffs, so they give him a decent contract, have him in that rotation to eat some innings and just continue to progress their young pieces. I think that would be a perfect fit. Moving on over to the American League Central, the Chicago White Sox, their right fielders had the worst OPS in all of Major League Baseball last year. So what do they need? A right fielder. You can go with a few options, but I think the number one guy on their list should be Corey Dickerson because he flat out rakes. And when you put him in the same lineup as Jose Abreu, who just signed a qualifying offer, you have Yoan Moncada, you have Tim Anderson, Eloy Jimenez. A lot of guys in that lineup can just flat out rake. And when you add Corey Dickerson, yes, his defense is not that great, but it has improved in the last few seasons. Put him in that lineup. The White Sox, the fact that they do have Lucas Giolito and Michael Kopech is now officially deemed healthy. If they add Dickerson, they might actually be a playoff team. The Cleveland Indians are always really good at getting pieces at the trade deadline. Now, one thing that they do have to improve on is getting pieces as free agents. They did sign Edwin Encarnacion a few years ago, and that worked out amazing, and I think that they have to do the same thing this year with Marcell Ozuna. They traded for Yasiel Puig, but we all know that he is going to leave, so if you can add Marcell Ozuna in that lineup to wreck with Franmil Reyes, Carlos Santana, Jose Ramirez, as well as Francisco Lindor, the linchpin, I think that the Indians, they can be scary, considering they're going to have Corey Kluber back and healthy. Mike Clevenger showed that he can be a Cy Young candidate along with Shane Bieber, and then they have young pieces like Aaron Savali and Zach Plesac. The Indians do not sleep on them if they get Marcell Ozuna. I'm not even really sure what to say about the Detroit Tigers because their leading home run hitter last year was 15 from Brandon Dixon. Their starting pitchers are not very great. Even their best one, Matthew Boyd, had a kind of weird up and down roller coaster 2019. So we're going to go ahead and say the Tigers, they need an entire farm system. And yeah, I can't just pick one player. I'm sorry. I love the Kansas City Royals and their current lineup. They have pieces like Jorge Soler, Whit Merrifield, Raul Mondesi or Alberto Mondesi, Hunter Dozier. I think they're going to be pretty good in the next couple seasons as long as Whit does not leave. The rebuild, though, it's still in progress as they need to get some starting pitchers. I don't think they're going to find a Zach Greinke like they did previously when he was with the team. Maybe they go out and sign someone like Derek Holland, who is a veteran. He's not going to be that expensive. The Royals, again, they're in the middle of the rebuild. I don't think they're going to go for any big fishes, and it's pretty evident. Dallas Keuchel to the Minnesota Twins. We all want that to happen as a baseball fan. I can just see it right now. He would look pretty good in that Twins uniform. I'm not sure if Kyle Gibson and Jake Odorizzi are going to leave because they're a playoff team. Odorizzi was great last year. I hope he does not, but he will be on this list going to a different team. But Dallas Keuchel as a solid innings eater, that's all you need in Minnesota because their lineup is going to be so prolific unless Jonathan Scope leaves because he's a free agent and it might happen. The final division that we have to talk about from the American League is the West Division. The Houston Astros, they're going to get Lance McCullers back, and they might also call up Forrest Whitley to fill up the spots of Garrett Cole and Wade Miley because, yes, I do think that both of those players will be leaving the Astros. So in my opinion, just like I talked about Jake Odorizzi and the Twins, hopefully that he stays, I don't think that he will because the Astros, they can get this guy. Jake Odorizzi had a mid-3 ERA and a 10.1 strikeouts per 9. What happens with any pitcher as soon as they go to the Astros or the Tampa Bay Rays? Their strikeouts per 9 goes up and their walks per 9 go down. So if that happens to Jake Odorizzi, we might have the next Charlie Morton on our hands. It took everything in my power not to say that the one player the Astros needed was a new cameraman in center field. So Astros fans, there you go. That is my early Christmas gift to all of you who are listening right now. Thank you for watching. I appreciate you. If you are a Los Angeles Angels fan, or heck, if you're on the management team of the Angels, please listen up right now. The baseball gods have not been kind to you, and I understand that, but there's one player that can fix everything in LA. You already have Mike Trout. Garrett Cole needs to be on the West Coast. He went to UCLA, and he can be a force with Mike Trout. Garrett Cole as your number one starter. Maybe you sign a few more other pieces. Maybe you trade for Kyle Schwarber. I'm not sure what can happen with the Angels, but if you get Garrett Cole, that shows the fans that you are trying to win. Because for right now, I'm gonna be honest with you guys, Mike Trout, he is putting butts in the seats and he is putting the team on his back. Because even though I'm a diehard Indians fan, I do not want Mike Trout to be in the same category as Todd Helton, players that were superstars who never even sniffed the World Series. I mean, Todd Helton, he did make it, but he got swept by the Red Sox. So Mike Trout, please get him in the playoffs, and I think the best way to do that is starting with Garrett Cole. 31. Yeah, that's all I have to say because 31 is the amount of saves that the Oakland Athletics blew in 2019, which is crazy because they have Liam Hendricks and he almost won Reliever of the Year. I don't know how that happens. The one player that I do think that the A's need to go for is Will Harris. Disregard the home run that Howie Kendrick hit. That was a really good fastball on the outside part of the plate. Howie Kendrick just had the swing of his life. Will Harris had a 1.58 ERA in 2019. If you don't think that's good, if you think that home run is going to be in the mind of Will Harris going forward, I understand that, but Harris, he can get the job done. That was just an incredible swing from Howie Kendrick. The Seattle Mariners, also a team that needs multiple pieces to even sniff the playoffs. Rick Porcello, poor guy, I feel bad for him. He wins the Cy Young, gets a big contract, so I guess I don't feel bad for him because he is worth a ton of money now. His net worth is looking pretty solid. I think that Rick Porcello to the Mariners, it would give him a really low-key place to play, maybe try and save his career because for right now, let's face it, I don't think anyone wants Rick Porcello if he's trying to get $10, $15 million. He deserves maybe $3 to $5 million a year. He's been that bad after he imploded the last few years and had a 4.79 ERA combined since 2017. Yeah, it's not going to cut it. And last but not least, before we get into the National League, we have the Texas Rangers to talk about. And this one is going to be a little bit of a twist because we're not going to be talking about a free agent. No, we're going to talk about a trade that I think the Rangers need to make. The Yankees have Miguel Andujar. The Rangers, they need a replacement for Adrian Beltre because all of their pieces that they tried, they have not worked out. Miguel Andujar needs to be traded to the Texas Rangers. I don't care who they have to give up except for Joey Gallo and maybe Willie Calhoun. But when you have Miguel Andujar at third base, maybe he can improve that defense, and Joey Gallo in the same lineup, that is going to be a force to be reckoned with. And honestly, kind of reminds me of Josh Hamilton and Adrian Beltre, just not on the same level, of course. It just reminds me of it. I don't really have anything to say about our first National League team, the Atlanta Braves, because their number one need was a closer, and they went out and got Will Smith, so I'm going to go ahead and tip my cap. If anything, they need a catcher because, Brian McCann is not going to be signing. He's actually retiring, and then I think they're also going to lose Tyler Flowers in free agency. So Martin Maldonado, who was pretty good for the Astros in the playoffs and the second half of the last regular season, he'd be a decent fit, but again, the Braves, they filled their number one hole, and I got to tip my cap. Ooh, the Miami Marlins. I'm gonna be real with you guys. Not the worst team on this list. They show that they have some pieces with Brian Anderson and a couple other guys on their squad. I think that they could use a power bat, especially in that huge stadium. Justin Smoke, who had 85 home runs combined in the last 3 seasons, he's a free agent. He received a standing ovation from the Blue Jays fans, so we all know he's not going back there. So in my opinion, Justin Smoke, he'll be signing with the Miami Marlins. I'm not even really sure where to begin with this Mets squad. They were a decent team last year and actually almost made the playoffs, but I think the glaring hole in this squad is their 4.95 bullpen ERA was the 5th worst in all of baseball. In order to get that corrected, you can try Steve Cishek, who had a 2.55 ERA between 18 and 19, so he's been solid for 2 straight years. Put him in that bullpen and see if he can try and right the ship. I mean, bullpen pitchers are so weird. You have someone like Edwin Diaz, who goes from having one of the most historic relief seasons of all time in 2018 to being a clown and a joke in 2019. I don't get it. Imagine this. The Philadelphia Phillies are in Game 7 of the World Series and Madison Bumgarner is on the mound. He can hit too. Now, the one thing about Madison Bumgarner is he's not getting any younger, and his ERA did slip all the way to a 3.9 last season. Maybe that's because his team was not that great and he wasn't getting run support. The Phillies, they have been loud and proud about the fact that they're going to spend some money. Bumgarner, I don't think that he is going to get as much as Strasburg and Mr. Garrett Cole, but still, Bumgarner is no scrub. He can actually make some noise in a Phillies uniform, and I think that would be a beautiful thing to watch. The Washington Nationals had an atrocious 5.68 bullpen ERA last year and still were able to win the World Series because their pitchers actually decided to right the ship at the perfect time. I hope that Daniel Hudson does resign, but I don't think that he is going to. So in my opinion, I feel like the Nationals, they could get away with someone like Cody Allen, who again was non-tendered from the Angels last year. He's not been great ever since he left the Indians, but maybe he can find some rebirth with a good and winning Nationals team. That's some high hopes, but it could happen. And oh yeah, they just have to re-sign this guy. I don't know if he's very good. Anthony Rendon. Yeah, if the Nationals do not re-sign him, that's just blasphemy. You need to give that man his money. The Chicago Cubs, very simple. Very, very, very simple. Re-sign Nick Castellanos, Mr. Nicholas Castellanos, if you want to be proper. I'm sure his parents call him Nicholas. He had 16 home runs and a 1,002 OPS for the Cubbies last year. If they don't re-sign him, I hope he comes to the Indians and we're winning the World Series 10 years in a row. It's guaranteed. This guy rakes, bro. So I brought it up a few seconds ago. I'm not sure if the Cincinnati Reds are ever going to move on from Raisel Iglesias. It seems like every single year Iglesias is talked about being traded, and I think that maybe they should move on from him, maybe move him to that same team that we talked about could use him, the Washington Nationals. I think the Reds, they could sign Chris Martin and be done with it. He had a 3.08 ERA in the first half. He was traded to the Braves and then had a 4.08, so that's not good going forward. But again, Chris Martin, he's pretty nasty. I think that he would look great in a Reds uniform, and then they can move away from Iglesias because it's just, there's too much turmoil there. The Milwaukee Brewers need to do one of two things. They have to re-sign Mike Moustakas because the market is way too expensive right now. He had a 3.2 WAR last year in 2019, which is actually incredible for someone like Mike Moustakas because he's not going to require Josh Donaldson or Anthony Rendon money. The third baseman market is top heavy because of those two guys, Rendon and Donaldson, so I think the Brewers, they can get away with a cheaper cheaper, kind of lesser version of those guys, and Mike Moustakas re-sign him, just like the Cubs should re-sign Nicholas Castellanos. The Pittsburgh Pirates had the 4th worst rotation in all of baseball last year, and again, they're kind of on the list where they're a solid team, but they need more than just one guy to actually get them over the hump. I think if they can sign a low-end starter like Michael Wacha, he gets a new team, a new start. He was pretty bad last year for the Cardinals, but he still got some gas left in the tank. He throws decent. He's not terrible. I think that he would be a good Pirate pickup. So if we're talking about Michael Wacha leaving, that means that the St. Louis Cardinals have to do something to fill that hole, and I'm going to give you guys a name right now that I think would be perfect in St. Louis. Hyun-Jin Ryu. He owns a crispy 2.21 ERA between the last 2 seasons. Could you imagine a Ryu, Flaherty, and Dakota Hudson mix with also Miles Mikolas, or I don't know how to say his last name. I've said it wrong every time I've actually brought his name up, but Miles and the rest of those guys, that would be an excellent 1-4 punch. Ryu to the Cardinals. Let's make it happen. That would be insane. The Arizona Diamondbacks showed that they can be a solid team. They almost made the playoffs last year, led by Ketel Marte, who broke out. He is just, I don't know where that came from, but the Diamondbacks, they need a solid back-end relief pitcher to combine with, what's his name? He's got a beard. Archie Bradley. See, I know baseball, but Brandon Kitzler, he saved his career last season with the Cubs. He had a 2.68 ERA, and if he can repeat that even at his age, I think that he would be an absolutely perfect fit in Arizona. I don't recommend that any starting pitcher should ever go to Colorado, because that's where you go to inflate your ERA. It's pretty much a balloon. If you want your ERA to skyrocket, go to Coors Field. But big body Tanner Roark, I don't think that he would mind. He hasn't been that great since 2016, but just like Dallas Keuchel, I think that he'd be an innings eater for a team that does rake in a stadium where balls fly. So Tanner Roark, he's going to get his money. He's not expected to be amazing, as he had a 4.35 ERA last season. I don't know who you would take if you're the Rockies. They can't ever seem to get the job done, no matter who they have on their team. We all saw that Dellin Betances tried to come back last season for the Yankees, and in doing so, tore his Achilles. I'm not sure if you need your Achilles as much as you do in basketball or football as in baseball, so hopefully he can come back and be healthy. We've seen signs of Kenley Jansen slowing down, so maybe they can use Betances as a buffer to extend Jansen's career, or maybe he has a bad heart, he's got some issues going on, and Betances, I think that they could really use him as a low risk, high reward. And if not Dellin Betances, I don't even want to say this out loud. The LA Dodgers, they could acquire Francisco Lindor via a trade, and I'm just going to leave it at that. The Dodgers, I think that they would be the best fit because they have the best pieces, and I think sending Corey Seager back to the Indians, as well as adding whoever they add as a right fielder, that would be, okay, I'm done. I can't talk about it much more. I'm going to cry. I think that Adam Wainwright is one of the most popular players in baseball right now. Maybe not amongst the younger generation, but if you're talking about hardcore baseball fans, everyone loves and respects Adam Wainwright. He's for sure going to cash in because of his second half and his postseason starts, and I think the Padres, they will give it to him. Imagine Adam Wainwright with his veteran presence able to actually kind of coach Chris Paddock and the rest of the guys on their squad. Adam Wainwright to the Padres, it's a match made in heaven. Although he has spent his entire career in St. Louis, so I don't know if he wants to dissuade from that just yet. And then last but not least, the San Francisco Giants, they all gave Madison Bumgarner a standing ovation, so he is not going to return. I'm fairly certain about that, but they need someone to replace him, and I think that Zach Wheeler, he can be one of the best pitchers in baseball when he's right. I just think that he needs to get away from the New York Mets and find a new home. I personally believe that he would flourish at Oracle Park. I'm still not used to that. I wish it was AT&T Park. We all can't get what we want in life, but hey, Zach Wheeler to the Giants. If you're a Giants fan, what do you make about that? But that is going to do it for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. I feel like I did a pretty decent job, so if you think the same thing, go ahead and slap a like on this one and subscribe, because we post baseball content every single day. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Do not forget to use code Fuzzy on SeatGeek. Peace out.